Basically, we're all here. You're preparing for Headship, and before I start, I just wanted to give you a bit of an introduction to myself, because it really links into why I've decided to take a year out. And I want you to think of me as the warm-up act before the main event, which is Robert. So I'm really bigging you up there, Robert. So I will take up about half an hour of your time, but. My career, I've been a teacher for about 20 years, and I put here that I'm quite an energetic, enthusiastic and hardworking deputy head. So I've been teaching for 17 years, both in England and Australia. I've been in both the state and independent sectors, and also I've taught in a variety of schools, from primary in Australia when I went on a teacher exchange for a year, secondary schools. I've taught in senior schools, but predominantly I've taught in the prep school environment. So my career profile has been very sort of typical, I suppose, that, in terms of being a subject teacher, moving on and progressing to head of department before I took the step up to senior management 6 years ago. So I was a deputy head at Moorland School, and I had a brief soiree as the acting headmaster as well, before I moved on to Barnard Castle School. I'm a firm believer in you take opportunities that are put in front of you, and I had the opportunity to study for a Masters in Education and Leadership at the University of Hull, and I've been doing that since September of last year. Now, I've always had a particular interest in management and leadership, and more so why deputy heads make that step up and want to make that step up to headship. And that's the real focus of my research. Why do deputy heads want to make that progress to headship, or why not? So my research is predominantly based with deputy heads in prep schools, and I've interviewed a variety of heads of deputies that are in prep schools that go to end of year 6, and deputies that go to the end of year 8. So that's a brief sort of introduction to myself. So why do you actually want to be a head? Why? What did it actually lead you to become a teacher? And I think about my own journey when I think about this, and when I became a teacher, I wanted to be the person that made a difference. I was the one that was going to make the difference. I had a passion for my subjects. So my subjects are sport and science. My passion for those subjects, I wanted to pass on my passion to the children I taught. I want to infuse others, and I still get a real buzz about teaching, going on the games field, teaching sports, whether it be rugby, football, cricket. It doesn't matter what sport it is, I get a real buzz seeing children enjoy what I'm teaching, and also, making their own individual progress. I find that really hugely rewarding. And I still enjoy teaching science. Who doesn't enjoy blowing up things in the science lab? Even though I'm still teaching the same topics every year, every child is different, that you have in different groups. So you've got to adapt to their needs and individual abilities. So the question that I'm sort of asking is, why do you want to leave all that behind? You want to make a difference. You've got a passion for your subjects. You get a huge reward out of teaching those subjects. Why do you want to leave that all behind and move to headship? Well, this idea of making a difference, you are making that difference to that individual child in that group, or the groups that you teach and the subjects that you teach, because you've got a passion for them. But you are now able to actually focus on a strategy and making a difference to the actual whole school. You've got a greater opportunity to actually infuse others, not just children, but actually adults as well. You're going to make a difference to so much more of so many more people's lives, like I said, children and also adults. So I've always been fascinated why deputy heads do or do not make that progress to headship. Deputies have made the journey from, like I said, very similar to my journey, from teacher to head of department, and then they've moved on to being a deputy head, and they've proved themselves along the way. Not everybody's journey is the same. Some people don't make that traditional journey. They may have gone up to head of department, and they may have made a jump from there to a senior managed position and potential headship. Others maybe I don't know, a housemaster or housemistress, and they may bypass some of the steps, but they prove themselves along the journey. And three questions that I'm sort of fascinated with is, why is it then that some deputy heads find the transition to headship more of a challenge in comparison to others? The second question that I wanted to ask and find out answers to was, why is it that some deputy heads decide not to progress their careers any further? And you know, we can call them career deputies. They're happy in the job that they do. They like being at the coalface, doing the day-to-day running of the school. They just don't want to make that step to headship. And the third question is, what are the factors that actually motivate or demotivate deputy heads' progress to headship or not? These are all the questions that, you know, I'd love to have answers to, and I've sort of interviewed a variety of deputy heads over the last year, and like I say, predominantly in the prep school environment. So the aim of the research was to identify why deputy heads are actually pursuing or not pursuing headship. And again, this question that keeps popping up into my head: so what are the actual driving forces, and what are the obstacles that deputy heads actually encounter on their journey to headship? So we wanted to shed some light on the reasons of this why or why not. And I think something that's really important is, you're all here because you want to be a head. It's that preparation for headship. So we're looking at highlighting the support mechanisms that could be useful for deputy heads in the transition to headship. So looking at the research, and I'm looking from an academic point of view here, that the journey to headship and the research that's out there is particularly lacking. There's only a few studies why deputy heads actually progress to headship in comparison to deputy heads who do not want to actually progress. And I've highlighted five main areas here with regard to headship. And the first one, James and Whiting in '98. Really interesting here, because from their research, they were looking at less than half the deputy heads actually wanted to progress to headship, and the factors that they sort of highlighted were personal influences on career decisions, and actually management and leadership development issues. Second study that sort of really popped out to me was the Garrett and McGeady one. Again, only 44% of career deputies wanted actually to make that leap, that jump to headship, and they had no intention of actually applying for headship. So the term that was used was career deputies, which potentially had a knock-on effect, I suppose, blocking future leaders coming through the system. Again, the main factors that they sort of highlighted were deputies lacked sufficient knowledge and experience in terms of preparation for headship. Third study, Bruce and Golding, again, 36% of the participants intended to actually go for headship, whereas 44% decided that they just did not want to make that step up. And then there was people sitting on the fence, they just weren't 100% sure whether they actually wanted to make that step up. One of the most recent studies was Chager's study with Biscoff, and this was a study that was based with secondary deputy heads. So they interviewed 14 deputy heads. 4 actually wanted to progress to headship, 6 didn't, and again 4 were undecided. And something that they highlighted in terms of the deputies that they didn't want to make that step was the accountability of the job, that whole work-life balance, and confidence in their own ability, which is something that I really want to highlight. And Bandura's work, absolutely fantastic work about confidence and the whole self-belief in, and you know, you wanting to make that next step up. And I think Bandura, sort of, the easiest way to describe it is a bit like peaks and troughs in terms of your confidence. One minute you're on a high, really, you know, thinking, yes, I can do this, I can make the step up. And then there are times when you're in a little bit of a trough and the confidence levels have have dipped somewhat, and you're lacking confidence in your own ability. So one of the other questions that we're looking for and the answers to is, how did deputies actually gain skills, experience and confidence to take up headship? Hopefully we'll shed some light on that. So the idea behind it, we interviewed a number of deputies, all in prep school education, and there were 4 main research questions that we were looking for answers for as well. So these are the 4 main research questions. Within each question, research question, there were a further 3 questions, so 12 questions in total. So we really probed the deputies in terms of how deputy heads actually view deputy headship, living and breathing it on a daily basis. How did deputy heads actually view headship? What are the factors that influence deputy heads' careers in terms of the motivation to apply for headship? And something that's I'm going to really delve into a bit more here this morning is what forms of leadership and management preparation could actually encourage career preparedness and career motivation against deputy heads for future headship roles. So in terms of the research findings, I've sort of picked out 6 of the main areas that really came out from all the interviews that we did. So just with regards to the interviews, they lasted approximately an hour. So there were open-ended questions, we could probe a bit in more detail with regards to the answers that the deputy heads gave. And, it was really enlightening to hear, some of the answers that were given. So, the first one is personal circumstances. We've all been in the situation where our partner, potentially it's going to be a relocation, and the knock-on effect that's going to have with regard to, your partner in terms of their job, in terms of their career. That is a factor that, was highlighted amongst the deputies. Also, if they had children, depending on the age of the children, the disruption of their education, whether they're at an age where they're possibly doing SATs or common entrance or GCSEs or A-levels, the disruption and the potential that may have in terms of, taking up a headship somewhere else in the country or maybe even abroad. So personal circumstances really did were highlighted a lot. Also that idea of work-life balance. You're taking that next step up, the workload is going to increase. Again, if you've got a family, that the effect it's going to have on your work-life balance. And it depends also on terms of the actual educational establishment that you're working as well. Whether you're in a day school, works Monday to Friday, whether it's you're in a boarding school, that's 7 days a week, and the demands that have on it, have on you. So the work-life balance, did come up as well. And it also depended on in terms of the stage of and how long they've been teaching in terms of their career, and did they want to actually make that step up and have that work-life balance. Also accountability. Technically you are becoming the CEO of a company, and therefore, the buck stops with you. So some people felt that the job was more accountable, and therefore they felt that they were happy to just stay as a deputy or in a senior management role and let the buck stop with someone else, and someone else make the decision. So that whole idea of accountability was something that was influencing deputies in making their decision not to actually step up. Also, management and leadership development issues. Again, something that really came to the fore was the lack of development as whether when they're on senior leadership or as a deputy. And you well know the life of a deputy, you have to wear many hats. And I always hate shouldn't be wearing a t-shirt with the Superman, Superwoman logo on. You have to do so many things, wear so many hats. Is the time to actually develop yourself and get that CPD and have the opportunities to develop yourself to take that next step up. So management and leadership development issues, and I've always been a firm believer that one of the jobs of the head is to develop the leaders of the future. Some heads can be quite selfish, and they may have a fantastic deputy and they don't want to lose them, so they're keeping them for selfish reasons and not developing them. Others, will develop the deputies and let them spread the wings and fly off and take the new role as a head. And this one links into really the management and leadership development issues of, lacking that sufficient knowledge and experience. Again, it links into the confidence level. So if they're feeling that the management and leadership development issues, they're lacking sufficient knowledge and experience, that can have a detrimental effect on deputies' confidence levels and the feeling that they actually can't make that next step. So something that I really wanted to highlight here was the research recommendations. So the support mechanisms that actually could be useful for deputy heads in that transition to headship. And it was really one of the research questions, so what forms of leadership and management preparation can actually encourage career preparedness and career motivation among deputy heads for a future headship role. And those three areas here that I've highlighted. So what aspects of the current role of the deputy head have prepared you for headship if you wanted to apply? And some of the things that really have been highlighted is, and I can't emphasize this enough about being in part of a network, and the independent schools network has been absolutely fantastic for myself, and I know for a number of other people. So being part of a network, not just getting the excellent CPD, but the ability to network with other deputies and other senior leaders is really invaluable. So being part of a network, deputising for the head. Some deputies said, well, I actually quite like it when the head's out, because I get to step up and deputise for them, and I'm in the top job, albeit for a very short space of time, but you're getting a taste of being in the top job. Also being member of being part of management, whether it's senior leadership, senior management teams, and also that ability to plan and develop with regard to policy, and obviously we know that policy is important, and especially this the sort of situation we find ourselves in at the moment in terms of policy and COVID-19, but that policy and inspection, being well informed with regard to policies and practices. So with regard to the second area, what do you actually think would help to actually successfully prepare for headship? So in terms of work shadowing, that really was emphasised, the ability to shadow the head, seeing actually what they do on a daily basis, also being coached by a head, so having a mentor, the use of critical friends. We all like praise and being told that we've done something well, but also highlighting the areas that potentially you need to work on as well. I mentioned earlier about networking, being part of a network. Like I say, ISP is absolutely fantastic, but you are, over time you build your network even bigger. LinkedIn has been absolutely fantastic as well for myself, and I know use of social media, Twitter out there, again is a really great tool to use for networking. Obviously mentoring from other heads. I know once you make that step up to headship, in terms of IAPS, you get a head interview for the first year. Various courses that you're able to go on. I know, again, you are here today in terms of the course and the ISP, but also undertaking postgraduate study. That's what I've done. I've decided to take a year out to do a master's in terms of postgraduate research, but also lots of people do MPQHs as well. So undertaking postgraduate study is something that's really helping people to prepare for headship. And finally, this third point in terms of what future leadership and management areas would actual deputies desire for professional development. And something that really did come up was financial management. So dealing with the finances. And as you make that step up to headship, you are dealing with, budgets in the millions. And financial management, people say that they lack the experience in financial management. So potentially spending a day with your bursar, going through various things, hopefully being invited onto financial management governors meetings, sitting in and seeing how it all works. Again, getting your own CPD in terms of financial management and going on the various courses. And speaking to people who are accountants, I found that came out as well, that they've tapped into their network of people that they know, and therefore got some experience in terms of the financial management side. Also, with regard to change management and leadership, that is something that people would like more experience in. And there's a variety of things that you can go and do with regard to courses, which are really helpful. So one thing that's really wanted to highlight, and it's a bit of bedtime reading, if you have the opportunity to get this book, and this is like my Bible, it's an absolutely fantastic book. It's by Dr. Jill Berry. It's called Making the Leap, and it's from moving from deputy to head. Relatively inexpensive, only about £10. I do not get any commission from this by trying to sell it to you and pushing it your way, but Jill was a head for a number of years, decided to take a break, did a doctorate, and it was that making that leap from, like I say, deputy to head, and she focused on secondary heads. But it's a really easy read. There's 5 chapters, and I've broken it down, as you can see on the screen. So the first thing is that making that leap. So why would you actually want to be a head? But it breaks it down to, like say, 5 easy chapters. So chapter 2 is about applying for headship. So looking at those key principles in terms of your application, making a successful application. And if you are successful in the job application, managing that lead up period before you actually take up headship. And then the early months in post and inheriting it rather than inhabiting the role. And finally, your established headship and beyond. And can't recommend it enough. It's like I say, 5 easy chapters, and at the end of each chapter it also asks probing questions and also gives lots of recommendations. So a really good read, and I really recommend it, and it doesn't take long, and you can also sort of go back to it as and when you need to. So that's really a bit of a whistle-stop tour of the work that I've been doing. Something that's coming out of this is looking at potentially doing some longitudinal studies over a 3 to 5 year period with heads who are starting the journey and going through the whole journey, and also whilst they're in headship. Jill sort of concentrated on the secondary sector. I'm more interested in the primary and the prep sector. I feel that there is, potentially some differences between. So that's me done. Hopefully that's been of use. If there is any questions, feel free to fire away, and I'll try and help it. If not, I'll try and tap into my network, and hopefully I'll get some answers for you. That's me done, Robert. Thank you.